do it on your own. If you can't
But that's how I
find
be
it,
looking
then
up stuff.
get the answer on your own. Check the book for the answer. Something you do like that, you can never forget it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the purpose of this. So everybody should get this 50 questions right. That's the point. It's not a quiz.
So how about number 41? Are you gonna get that one right?
We'll see when we get
Go
there.
in order.
When we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. Okay.
You're lucky we couldn't find
You would have fixed me, right? Okay, so let's go to let's do this together. The law practice. Number one, when your license expires, how long after expiration do you have to apply for reinstatement?
3.
Up to 3 years. Answer to that is B. Up to 3 years. Okay. Please note all these questions. They're extremely relevant for your PSI. Mostly for your PSI. Okay, and some of them also are relevant for your finals on Wednesday. Okay. Now, what's required for the first renewal of a salesperson's license?
15 hours.
That's
Everybody.
A.
And
Right,
$7.
that's A. Good. The decision of the hearing panel upon initial review of the complaint is what?
Is it a final decision?
Is D.
Yeah.
Shall be considered the final decision of the commission. What does that mean?
It means that you can
You can go back.
appeal it to,
It means you can do what?
is it appeal?
You can appeal it.
to the judicial?
It means you can appeal it, but what that means is that the commission is done with it. It's final. Whatever you want to do afterwards
Goes
is
to
your call.
judicial, yeah.
You can go on appeal, they don't care. But so it's going to be a final decision from the point of view of the commission. Okay, that's what the final decision means. Okay, number 4, who's required to hold a real estate license?
See?
C. C. Okay, good. Number 5, a broker may have his license suspended or revoked for all of the following except
B.
B, depositing the EMD in his firm's escrow account. Good. Number 6, what are the additional educational requirements if someone qualifies for the license of a deceased broker? And how long does the new broker have to meet the educational requirements?
35 hours in 4 years.
135 hours within 4 years. Okay. Number 7, a licensed insurance salesperson is also a licensed real estate salesperson. He holds both licenses. He used a client's insurance premium to pay for his real estate license instead of the insurance. He was found to be in violation by a court of law and his insurance license was revoked. What action might the commission take in regard to his real estate license?
You must hear a hearing to see if they.
It's C. It's C. They may summarily suspend. They may summarily suspend his license. Yeah.
Now, can I ask you a question? Why is it now
No.
summer? Is it because he was found guilty by the other?
Yes.
And okay, that's what I'm.
Yes. They care about what you do on other stuff. Okay, they care about what you do. And don't forget that it's the same, Department of Government that issues.
We all agreed on that. What you talking about?
What you mean, we?
I just. It was
You got that
Island
right.
by yourself.
Offices of the
I,
city.
You
I,
told
I
me.
was ready to, you saying, defend that. I got it.
Okay. Okay, number 8. A person is convicted in court of practicing real estate brokerage without a license. What is the maximum penalty the court could impose?
5,000 up to 2 years.
It's D.
Yeah.
It's D. It's not just 5,000. You could get 5,000, or you could also get up to 2 years in jail. Depending.
B or D? D. B for board, D for
Your violation was taking
What-
money and.
Exactly. Stuff like it depends on the gravity, okay, of your infraction, of what you did. So you could get 5,000, or you could get 5,000 and 2 years in jail, depending on what you did. Okay. Number 9. A real estate broker is convicted in a court of law of violations of trust fund law. The conviction is final and the appeal period is expired. The commission must or may do what?
B.
B.
Somebody revoke.
B, they may summarily revoke his license. Okay. Number 9 is B. Number 10, when the commission sends a copy of a complaint against the guarantee fund based on the actions of the salesperson and requests a written response, what happens? A. You must respond in writing within 10 days. If a license is revoked, notice of same is sent by the commission to who? All of them.
Everybody.
All of them. They send it to everybody. Number 12, a licensee engaged in activities that were in direct violation of the Maryland Fair Housing Law and she also cashed a $40,000 check from her buyer and purchased a car. The salesperson's group was unaware. This happens in real life though. This kind of thing happens in real life. Okay. The salesperson's broker was unaware of these activities. What is the impact on the broker when this salesperson's activities are brought to the attention of the real estate commission?
C.
It's A.
Went for A.
It's A.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That is
So
A.
no, I looked at that too. That was one of the one I was gonna. Yeah, I looked at as well.
That is A.
I figured that when I was okay. A.
Why do you think it's not C? The salesperson's actions are the legal responsibility of the broker.
Yeah, the broker
Legal.
is subjected to the.
The word legal.
Fine.
The word
Yes.
legal.
Yes.
The word legal, I think, is what
Legal
the word
obligation.
legal is the word that.
Because if you, yeah.
Can be fined too.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm thinking he can be fined still.
But
So
not
the
the
word
same-
legal is what
Yeah.
kind of, he
not
can be
the same
fined.
fine,
License
but
suspended.
not the same fine.
Yeah.
Oh, the same fine?
Probably
Yeah.
not going to jail, but he's getting.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
but getting-
different.
But it's getting some kind of punishment for that. Okay.
See, why do you wanna be a broker?
So it's not gonna, so the broker's not gonna go to jail, obviously, because it's a personal action. Okay, don't forget the principle of vicarious liability. You remember that? The
Yeah.
principle of vicarious liability. Okay, you can bind your broker by your actions. And what that means is that your broker can be held responsible in some way for what you did. It doesn't mean that your broker is gonna get the exact same punishment that you got because you did the act.
But this joint says suspended or revoked. Why is revoked even in the
Again,
what?
depending on the nature of the gravity of the offense, it happens. Some brokers are extremely, pardon my language, useless.
What if the
Yeah.
broker saw that there was
there was something going on and they did it.
He didn't have the EMD.
Exactly.
Title company didn't have the EMD, and the broker's like, oh, well.
Or the broker knew that he had the check issued out in his name and the broker did nothing. Didn't report it. He knew there was evidence to show that the broker knew about it, that the check was issued in the salesperson's name, which was a criminal offense as well as an ethical violation, and the broker did nothing about it. You're gonna lose your license. That's why you're the broker. You're gonna lose your license. If you don't know about it, they're still gonna ask questions whether you should have known about it. Did you provide adequate supervision? If you didn't, then they could suspend your license for that. You could get your license back for that. Okay, but if you knew about it and you did nothing about it, which could be the case, you're gonna lose your license forever. It's gonna get revoked because you're not responsible. Okay, because you're not a responsible broker. Okay, so let's be careful with this kind of question. Okay, it could be confusing, but be careful about it. The broker can still be found responsible. As a matter of fact, a question could be couched in such a way that the answer they're looking for is whether or not the broker can be liable for that act itself legally. Then the answer to your question would be the broker will not be liable. Do you get the point I'm trying to make? So it depends on how the question is framed.
Okay, I got you.
So sometimes the answer to this kind of question, depending on how it's framed, is that the broker is not
Legal.
responsible. If the question has to do with anything legal.
Yeah.
Do we understand that? So we need to be careful with a question like this. Okay, number 13. A real estate conservation area refers to what? A. Good. You can't build houses in those kind of areas. 14. All of the following are necessary in order to file a complaint with the commission except A. Good. If proper notice is given to a licensee against whom an action is contemplated and the licensee fails to appear for the hearing, which of the following is true? A, they may hear and determine the case. Now here's a question. If you fail to appear, can the commission give a default judgment against you? They can hear and determine the case. Can they give a default judgment? You know what a default judgment is?
No.
Like in court, the judgment that someone gets for not coming to court.
Guilty.
You know, like you're supposed to appear before the court and you didn't to defend the case. So the court can give a judgment in default of appearance
They
that you're
could.
guilty of the crime charged.
Okay.
That's a default judgment. Can the real estate commission do the same here?
Oh, yeah.
No, they can't. They still have
To hear
the
you.
mandate to consider the merit of the case.
Well, the person to show up.
So if the case is a stupid case, you're still not going to be held guilty even though you don't appear before the commission. Does that make sense? So they can't give a default judgment. They will hear and determine the case in your absence
Well, why would they
on
even
the
bring a
merit.
case up if they're not gonna?
No, because someone wrote the complaint against you. They still need to hear the case.
Oh.
Don't forget that, you know, it's usually almost everything. Someone has to write a complaint to the commission.
Do you know how many stupid people are out there who buy a house? Why couldn't I get cash at closing? It's illegal. I'm
Exactly.
filing a complaint against you.
Exactly. So someone did exactly. So someone did that. Someone did that.
Yeah.
They want you to give them cash at closing. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Which, if you did, was going to be a violation.
Mhm.
And then they write a complaint against you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the commission serves you a notice to appear before it. And you don't appear. Do you think they're going to win the case? No, the commission isn't going to find you guilty. So sometimes maybe the wisest course of action to do,
Not
if
to
you
go?
know, if you know that the outcome is going to be that you're not going to be held liable, is not to waste your time to appear before the panel. But I wouldn't advise that. You still have.
They may be confused.
Exactly, they may be confused. Okay, so you still have the ethical obligation to appear before a panel. If you're required to appear before the panel, you still have the ethical obligation to appear. But sometimes it's not worth it. You know they're not going to find you liable for the allegation. Okay, so for here, they may go ahead and determine the case in your absence, but they can't give a default judgment just because. Okay, number 16. Who keeps the guarantee fund up to its minimum reserves and administers its use?
Commission.
C, the commission. Okay. Number 17. Who may not make a claim against the fund?
Spouse.
D, the spouse. D. Number 18. A licensed salesperson may hold concurrent licenses with more than one broker, under which circumstances? C. 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 Both must agree. Number 19. How is the act of blockbusting regarded by Maryland law?
Misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. Yeah.
So we're allowed to shoot them, right?
Misdemeanor. Okay. When may a brokerage lawfully perform dual agency?
This one we're stuck on.
Is it C?
It's C.
Okay.
No.
Answer to that is C.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So now D, right?
Hmm?
Don't the buyers and the sellers, they do have to agree to the dual agency, correct?
They have to.
And that, now why wouldn't it be D? Because I mean, we got C, but why wouldn't it be D? Is it because there's nothing written
Because
there?
D is just a statement of facts.
Okay.
It doesn't really
Basically, you need the best
answer the question. Yeah, it's a statement, it's a true statement. D is a true statement. Now in some situations, I don't know if I told you this before, you say two correct answers. But you
But
have
what if you're the broker and you have one agent? So it doesn't matter what the borrower signs.
Exactly,
You
it
gotta have two
wouldn't matter
agents.
what they agreed on, because don't forget that you have to have a minimum of 2 salespersons in your brokerage to perform a dual agency, right?
Mhm.
So let's say you have 2 buyers who have agreed on dual agency, but you have only 1 salesperson plus the broker. You know you can't do dual agency in that kind of situation. So even though the buyer and seller agreed to it, it's not allowed. So sometimes it goes beyond the mere agreement of the buyer and the seller. Other requirements have to be satisfied. Okay, but in this case, let's just assume D is a correct statement of fact, but it's not the best answer. C is the more correct answer. D is correct, but C is more correct. Okay. Number 21. Okay, D.
Basically, you do that one. That's what you said.
Number 22. When must a licensee who's representing the seller disclose this fact to the buyer?
Oh, they in the face first.
C. 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 No later than the first scheduled face-to-face meeting. Okay, C. Now, this kind of question in the PSI comes in the form of a scenario. Again, they'll tell you whether or not they met the first time. They'll tell you, they can give you the fact that at first contact. Why is first contact not the answer?
Because they could be like this inquiring.
It could be virtual.
Yeah, I was
Okay, it could be on the phone,
yeah.
right? It could be through an email. It's not face to face.
Got it.
Okay, that's why at first contact is not. It could be the answer. The first contact could actually be face to face too, but it may also not be. But number C is more correct because it says no later than the first face to face meeting. Okay. Number 23 is B, right? Number 24. When an employing broker has his license suspended for 2 years, what effect does this have on the associate brokers and salespersons affiliated with that broker?
Is it D?
D.
Okay.
D. They must all return their licenses to the commission.
Yeah.
They have to.
Yeah.
You first have to return it.
Return it,
Now, if you find another brokerage,
Now, my question for that now, in the event of the associate broker and the salesperson, you know how if you switch brokerage or go to somebody, you gotta pay a fee, correct? Now, would they be charged a fee in this case, since it's not really their fault, they're not really leaving on purpose?
no, I don't think they'll be charged a fee for
Okay.
this one. Yeah, because it's not a deliberate and intentional movement from brokerage to brokerage. It's because of something the
The
brokerage
brokerage did, exactly.
$10.
Yeah, but still.
They're in the business of making fees.
Mhm.
They might. Oh, shit. I mean, man, I'm like,
Pick better next time, won't you?
I know, right? Yeah, your broker too, as much as you can get your broker in trouble, your broker too can get you in trouble. Okay. Number 25. Which of the following is required to obtain a broker's license?
see?
C, that's the exam. I'm teaching the broker's class next month. 30 days. For people who are trying to be brokers.
Wow. You mean every night or? all
Every
day?
day.
All day?
No, yeah, all day.
All day, for 30 days.
From 9 to 4.
Yeah.
It's your 9 to 5, Sean.
Took vacation off of work?
Yep. I have PTO.
30 days, that's a long time.
You
Yeah.
got a lot of
That's starting in
PTO.
August.
Damn.
You don't sound too happy. That's all in August.
Yeah.
You get the air conditioner every day.
Yeah, I made them fix that. It's temperature is better now, right?
Yeah,
It's
really
just-
good. Yeah, on the last week.
I fought your fight.
Thank you.
Seriously, I had to write a nasty email to somebody, like, this is unacceptable, like, what, like, it's not right.
I forgot to even bring my jacket, it's so cold in here.
Okay. Okay, number 26
A.
is A. 26 is A. Number 27. When purchasers receive no residential property disclosure statement either before or after entering into a purchase agreement, what happens?
B.
B.
Maybe.
B. Good. You may rescind the contract before you apply for a mortgage loan. Okay. You know what rescind means, right?
You take back.
Go back. On it.
Cancel it.
Cancel it.
Okay. Number 28. In Maryland, a legal listing agreement.
A.
A. A. Number 29.
D.
D. Captain Rowboat owns 10 acres of land in Maryland. His property is divided by a navigable river. The captain has a right to do what? A. He has a right to build a pier. Yeah. That is A. 31, in Maryland, a deed that conveys ownership to Nick and Nora Charles, husband and wife, but doesn't specify the form of ownership. C. Creates a tenancy by the entirety. Now you do know that a deed can convey property to a husband and wife and it's not tenancy by the entirety, right?
Yeah.
You know that, right? Because it's not in all cases when you say husband and wife that you jump to tenancy by the entirety.
Could be
In what situation can it not be tenancy by the entirety and it can be
Tenancy in
any other
common?
form of co-ownership?
tenancy in common?
It could be tenancy in common or joint tenancy. So if I create a joint tenancy, I give a property to a husband or wife as joint tenants. That's not tenancy by the entirety because it's specific. But if I just say I give you as husband and wife without stating what form of ownership it is, then by operation of law, it is a tenancy by the entirety. Okay. Number 32. A timeshare developer is required to do what? A. Register with the Real Estate Commission. 33. A contract for resale of a condominium is not enforceable unless the owner furnishes the buyer no later than 15 days prior to the closing. What?
D.
D. All of them. D. All of them. Which type of legal description are utilized in Maryland?
D.
D. B and C. All residential real property in Maryland is
B.
B. Yes. 36. B buyer has never owned a principal residence in Maryland. She will settle on the purchase of a $100,000 home in April. How will the state transfer tax be apportioned as settlement?
C.
C. C. First time home buyer. $37. Which of the following disclosures will not be necessary in a Maryland real estate sales contract?
D.
D. D. 38. To be valid between the parties, a deed to Maryland real property must meet all of the following requirements except that it be what?
A.
A. $39. To be eligible for recording, a deed conveying Maryland real estate.
You were stuck between A and C. What is it?
C. A is incorrect. It's not even correct, like it's not like a correct answer, but there's a better answer. It's just incorrect. So 39 is C. Number 40. In Maryland counties, deeds conveying real estate are not what?
C.
C. What's the business of the broker with that? Okay, number 41. In Maryland, which of the following are recognized as security instruments when buying a home?
D.
D. You said number 41, Kathy?
No.
Oh, you said 48.
The next one.
Okay,
42.
okay, 42. Okay, 42 too. A landlord holding a tenant security deposit of $1,000 is required to do what?
A.
A.
It's $15, not 30.
How you get $30?
1.5% isn't $30.
Who chose A?
I said A.
Why did you choose A? Let's start from there. I know the 1.5% rate. Okay.
Because it all could be what is.
Who chose A? Why did you choose A?
Some formula.
I used the formula in the back.
We used the formula like,
When I am.
1,000, you can have,
I can do that one.
you multiply it by.
What's the percent for the security deposit being held?
You know, for people who chose A, I want to know why they chose A.
No, I used the
Did you guys
math.
guess it?
No, I did the math.
I didn't
Okay,
do it
look
all.
for it.
Hold on.
I didn't do it all.
Look for it. I want someone to tell me why they are right at 8.
Alright, I got you.
It's in this one.
What did you choose?
So I didn't choose anything.
Okay, you
I put the answers to each one.
I ain't look at it, but I'm gonna look at it now. Give us a minute, Sean, give us a minute now.
Number 2. Number 12.
Yeah, the rate now is 1.5%. Yeah. I mentioned that in class, didn't I?
What?
The rate of interest for security deposit is 1.5%. When you return security deposit back to the tenant.
Right.
At the end of the lease.
Or,
I times it, I think, by 1.5.
Exactly.
See? You said see?
No, security deposit, see, it's computed, the 1.5 is computed for 6 months, so you have to
That
double
is the
that.
statutory rate actually. Banks don't pay up to 1.5%.
Which page you want,
They don't even pay, so
Yeah.
it's
91.
it's the landlord that has to pay for the value, for
Yeah.
the difference.
Loud ain't wrong.
What'd you say, Mr. Joseph?
1.5 is like for the half of the year, so you have to double up on that?
No, it's more.
No, it's still per annum. The 1.5 is per annum, even though they calculate it over 6
Yes.
months.
Okay, don't let's waste time on this. So in number 42, when this question was composed, okay, it was 3%. Okay. The interest rate was 3%. The 1.5% interest rate was just a recent development. I told you 1.5%, right? In this class,
and this is 1.5 in here.
in the book too. Okay. So when this question was written, it was, I
Do I
think
get a bonus?
it was 3. It was, so there's no correct answer in this number 42.
There's a question in
Because
there,
if it's
Sean.
1.5% and you have $1,000 as, as security deposit, it can be $30. Okay,
I thought
So there's no
you know how to do
so
the
it's
math.
1.5%. Okay, please don't forget that. If you use 1.5%, your answer wouldn't have been 8. And none of the other answers is correct, because they don't make any sense.
What do you do, multiply or divide it?
Multiply or divide what?
So you
The 1.5.
No, you would have multiplied
You multiply it by.
0.015. So I have a question, Sean.
Okay.
Possibly a question. Maybe a discrepancy in the book.
Okay.
So, in unit, I think was it unit 12, there was a similar answer to that, or similar question. And it states that you need to return the deposit within 30 days after termination of the lease. That was the answer the book gave.
But here is
But-
is asking you how much is going to be returned. Okay. You said 30 days. No, C. You're talking about C.
For
No,
42.
it's not 30 days. It's
Yeah, I know.
45
That's
days.
what I'm saying. I say it's a discrepancy in the because in the
It says
back of
30
the,
days in the book.
No, it
on one of the
doesn't.
book, yeah.
It
So
says 45.
in the notes that we read inside the book, it says 45 days. But however, in the back of one of the quiz, the answer that was selected was that answer for 30 days.
So maybe
so
they
this I'm
made a
saying it's a
mistake about
discrepancy in
that.
the book and these
Well,
as
it's
well.
45 days. That's it's 45 days settled. Okay, don't get yourself confused. It's 45 days. They have to return within 45 days. Okay. Number 43. The right of the landlord to have a court seize and sell the tenant's personal property for unpaid rent is called what? D is straight. 44. Filling of deadlines is what?
Last resort.
Last resort. 44 is B. 44 is B. Number 45. All of the following are sources of Maryland air pollution except
B.
B. Leakage from underground storage tanks. I don't see how that can lead to air pollution.
Yeah, Lola, I told you.
Okay, number 46, residential closings in Maryland.
D?
D. D. 47, all material facts regarding the sale of a residence must be disclosed according to Maryland regulations.
A.
The material fact is A. 48, when the property is being sold is owned by a seller who lives out of state, what happens?
B.
B. 48 is B. 49, according to Title 17, all of the following could be considered evidences of reasonable and adequate supervision by a broker except
A.
A. And then number 50. Number 50.
A. What is it, A?
A. Is A. Number 15A. Okay, so
You did well.
yeah, you guys did well. Okay, so you did well. We're still gonna review look some more questions, some more state questions today. Okay, so and I want you to pay attention to those too. We're also gonna do the general supervision. So as regards the math questions, so I mean, if you already know all what we did and the passes, all the. As a matter of fact, I think in the final they're only going to get 3 math questions out of it, other than 10 questions. So it's not, and it's stuff that you already did before, you know, calculation of, of the commission. So we're not going to waste time on the math base because it's nothing. Okay, let's go through some more state law questions. Let's go through some more questions. And I want you to note this, it means writing down something. That could be, you know, something that could stay in the middle of making Wednesday your final day or having to go to Bowie on Saturday to rewrite the final exam.
Right.
You have a chance to go to Bowie on Saturday?
If you don't pass on Wednesday, you have to go to Bowie on Saturday to rewrite the exam.
And then what? If you don't pass on Saturday, you're done.
Come on, bro. We gonna
You're
pass.
done.
We gonna pass
You
now.
gotta pass on. If you don't pass on Saturday, then maybe something is wrong with you. It's true because they're gonna get the same questions.
Maybe you're tired.
Tired on Wednesday and Saturday.
Let's go.
No, on Monday.
Then you're not taking this seriously. Then you really don't need this. Then you really don't need it. I see no reason why anybody shouldn't pass on Wednesday. That's the point I'm making. I'm not even talking about Saturday. I'm talking about Wednesday. Everybody should pass on Wednesday. Put your head in it.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Pressure makes
What did you say?
You might have to call out.
You better. Remember, you still have a quiz though.
I know, yeah, I'm taking it on Tuesday.
Okay, tomorrow. Okay.
Two tests, 2 days in a row. Wow.
Okay.
It's all good, Victor. Pressure makes diamonds, though. So.
It makes you fresh for Wednesday, don't mind.
Actually, yeah.
It makes you fresh for Wednesday.
Fresh. What quiz?
Quiz 3.
Oh, that was that
It's trying to scare you.
I don't get scared though, so let's just focus on the.
Okay. Okay, so let's say someone who's trying to buy a property receives the disclaimer and disclosure form. Okay, after he receives the disclaimer and disclosure form, you know, how many days does he have to rescind the contract or cancel the contract after?
No, 15 days.
15.
Up to 5 days.
Say it again, Sean, I'm sorry. Receiving the disclosure.
Now let me ask you another question, because it's easy to mix these things up, and I asked this deliberately. after the contract is signed, let's say, who makes the offer in the sales contract?
The purchaser.
The buyer makes the contract, makes the offer, right? So let's say the seller accepts the contract becomes what? Ratified, right? After the ratification of the contract, how many days does the buyer have to rescind the contract? 3 days.
What was the first one? What was the first one?
So that's what I'm saying. So I wanted to clear that. So don't mix these things up. If the question is after the contract was ratified, how many days does the buyer have to rescind the contract? The answer to that is 3. But if the question is how many days does the buyer have to rescind the contract after he receives the disclosure and disclaimer statement, it's 5 days after that. What is the disclosure and disclaimer statement for?
To know how much you're gonna be paying.
Yeah, so that's contingent upon what the exercise of your right to a home inspection.
The bulk of the property that they know of.
Right. Okay. So the answers are different if the cancellation is for the sales contract itself after it was ratified, or after the receipt of the disclosure and disclaimer statement. If it's after the receipt of the disclosure and disclaimer statement, it's 5 days you have to rescind the contract. If it's after the contract was ratified, it's 3 days you have to rescind the contract. Do we understand that?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Okay, so the buyer makes the offer, the seller accepts, the contract becomes ratified. After that, after the ratification of the contract, the buyer has within 3 days to rescind the contract. You know, why do you think you have within 3 days to rescind the contract?
Because that person needs to put their house
No. Because there's already a contract.
The contract
So
is there,
if you
yeah.
cancel it, ordinarily that should be a breach of contract, right? But why does the law give you that 3-day period to like say
Might change your mind.
buyer's remorse, which happens all the time. You know, the law gives you that leverage to rethink it within 3 days.
Thank God they don't give them 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. To rethink it within 3 days. Even though the contract is ratified, walking away could lead to a breach of contract, but if it happens within 3 days, then it's not a breach of contract. You can legitimately walk away. But if 3 days pass, you can't rescind the contract anymore. Now part of the process of the sales, is that you get a home inspection, you receive the disclosure disclaimer statement, then you can bail out after that too. That's another opportunity for you to bail out. So after you receive the disclosure disclaimer statement, you have within 5 days to check out. Adios.
After
You've done it
this
before.
disclaimer.
Okay, so let's note that. I want also know something about this disclosure disclaimer statement. Please note this. A seller who's selling his own house,
Oh, yeah.
okay? A seller who's selling his own house in which he's currently living in, owner occupied, and is trying to sell the property, and is not trying to use an agent to sell the property. Okay, he still has to give the buyer the disclosure and disclaimer statement.
Is it an FSBO?
Yeah, for sale by owner. Do you understand that?
No, I don't.
Disclosure.
Let me repeat that. You require, because usually when if you're using an agent, the agent does everything for you, right? If a seller, you're trying to sell your property, it's your agent who's gonna, put all the forms together, the disclosure disclaimer statement, make sure that you fill it up and all of those things. But now you're not using an agent. You're selling the property on your own without an agent. You're still required to give the buyer that document. They don't care where you're gonna get it from, but you're not absolved of the obligation to give that document to the buyer, the disclosure and disclaimer statement.
Hold on. So are you're giving your client the form, not the seller, like? So who you giving you say you giving your client, which is the buyer, because you're the buyer's client.
You're the seller. The buyer is not your client. It's just the person you're doing business with. It's just the person you're selling your property to. So you have to give the property disclosure and disclaimer statement to the buyer. If you're the seller, selling on your own, you were living on that property, you're trying to sell it, and you're not trying to use a real estate agent to do it, you still have to give the buyer this form.
I sold my house when I lived in California. I sold my
Right.
Maryland house for sale by owner. I didn't know about those disclosures.
You didn't give it, right?
I did
You
not
were-
give
you-
it,
you were
but
checked,
I
you were
got
for-
really lucky because we gave a bonus to the buyer's agent.
Oh, okay.
And he came in and he said, by the way, I'm gonna take care of these disclosures for you.
Oh,
That
Because
was
you
my
could be-
question.
And he explained it to me.
Right,
And I
right.
was like, wow.
That was my question. He just answered it. I'm like, the seller may not have an agent, but the buyer may have an agent. So I'm just
If
saying.
it's not his responsibility to do those disclosures,
It's
he
the
wanted
seller.
to protect us because, he understood like why we had to sell the house without an agent, why we needed the discount.
Okay, so please don't stop, please. Don't stop. Now here's another thing. For listing agreements, remember all the requirements for listing agreements. For for a listing agreement to be valid, first it must be in writing, right? The amount, that the commission of the broker must also be stated on the listing agreement. Okay, the commission rate, the commission percentage that the broker receives must also be in the listing agreement. And the seller must be given a copy of the agreement after signing it. Remember, the listing agreement is between the seller and the broker, right? So the agreement has to be in writing. The agreement must contain the commission rate of the broker, and after all the parties sign it, a copy of the listing agreement must be given to the seller. Okay, so if you see a question, it's asking you for the requirements, of a valid listing agreement, this is what you should be looking out for in them. Okay. We know that it's 9 members for the members of the board, right? So what's the breakdown of
5 and 4.
the 504 thing?
Five real estate.
Okay.
5 has a license.
Yeah.
So for the ones who's licensed, with the commission, they must have been licensed for how many years before?
10 years.
10 years immediately, before the appointment. Okay, immediately before the appointment. Okay.
What's wrong? 5 licensed and 4 unlicensed.
You know that if you're trying to what do you need to do if they're trying to open, a brokerage is trying to open a new branch office?
You gotta pay you gotta notify the commission within 10 days? Is that what it is?
Okay, so I want us to note this. So if you're trying to open a branch office, first you must make an application. That's the process. You must make an application to the commission in the correct form. There's usually a form for the application, so you must make the application to the commission. You must give the commission a notice of who is going to be the manager of the new branch.
Yeah.
The information. Do you guys remember that?
I did,
The
yeah.
information of the new branch manager that you're trying to open. And you must also pay an office certificate application fee of $25.
You said certificate fee?
Mm-hmm.
Say what?
An office certificate application fee of $25.
25?
Yes.
25.
You said name of
Office certificate application fee. So.
Oh, I got, your question was about the branch office, right? Oh, Lola, that's the question we were talking about, the branch office. If they're opening like a new
A
office, that's
new
what he
branch
said.
office.
That's where the branch manager comes in? You were
Yes.
trying to- okay.
Okay. Under the law of the state of Maryland, how many years do you have, to keep all copies of all
Five.
transactions? You
Up to
have?
five. At least 5, right?
At least 5 years, okay. So anything relating to real estate, whether it's a contract of sale, it's a listing contract, it's a rental contract, it's a rental property lease agreement. If it has to do with real estate, you have to keep it within 5 years, okay, before you destroy it. Okay. You know the minimum level of the guarantee fund, right?
250,000?
250,000?
250, yeah.
Now, we talked about the tenancy and the entirety the other time, which is between the husband and the wife, right? So we know that it's meant for married couples only, right? Can they like divide it among them between themselves? May it be petitioned? Is that allowed to be petitioned? No.
No?
No, it's not allowed to be petitioned. It's divided. That means divided. You can't petition it.
The
Okay.
tenancy
It
in
may-
entirety?
in the entirety. It's
Okay.
meant for married couples. They can't petition it. Okay. And it's the habendum clause that will tell you. What's the habendum clause again?
To have it all.
To have and hold. That is the language that conveys, right, the property to them. To have and hold. As husband and wife. As tenants in the entirety. So the tenancy in the entirety must be all of that. It must be for married couples. The deed must contain the conveyance language, the habendum, which says it is for that purpose, and the property may not be partitioned between the husband and the wife. Okay. So here's a question. The husband dies in a tenancy by the entirety. Does the tenancy by the entirety continue after the death of the husband?
Becomes severance.
No, it's terminated. It becomes ownership by severalty, right? One person ownership.
Hold on, John. Hold on, wait.
$250,000 is the amount of money that could.
If someone asks you, you did something for somebody, in your capacity as a real estate agent, and the person asks you, okay, they know how much fee you're gonna earn for what you did, and they ask you, okay, so how do you want me to pay you? What's gonna be your response to that?
Your broker.
You can't tell them.
All in the check to my broker. All in the check to my broker. Because we can't receive it, by yourself.
But then, what if they don't want to give you like?
No.
If they take you on
Take it.
Don't
Don't do it. Don't
How we best
do it.
Go ahead,
She
Mr.
must be
Wilson.
way better than Papa. I said, what if they want to carry you to Papa, like you'll be running up and down the whole day?
I don't want to give you money for gas.
But yeah, not even money for gas, but they say, okay, let's go have something to eat.
Don't do it.
At Papa. So, can you say that?
I mean, you can eat food. Who turns down food?
I just ate, really.
You ate
I mean, you can
Popeyes?
stop by to,
You just like,
get,
you gotta
some
take the
Popeye
leftovers
chicken-
to your
some Popeye chicken.
All kinds of
Okay, so we know all those activities that a licensed salesperson can do, and versus what an unlicensed maybe personal assistant cannot do. Okay, so please not all those things that they can. So here's a question: Can a personal assistant help to compute
No. Compute what?
how much commission someone is gonna earn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they can do
Yeah,
that.
they
It's
can do that.
clerical. It's administrative.
Yeah.
They can do
It
that.
could be a CPA, and
Mm,
not be,
exactly.
CPA and not be licensed, right?
Exactly. So they can compute commission checks. You know, they can at closing. What can they do at closing? They can help with the closing process, right? Like
Yeah.
do all the
Paperwork
paperwork,
and stuff.
assemble all the papers and all of that. Exactly. Answer the phone, you know. Kathy, you're going to say something?
Yo, this like the last day.
That.
Yeah.
But I read that Maryland doesn't
We
allow
done.
transactional brokers. I read that. Couldn't believe it.
Transactional brokers.
I mean, transactional, like you can't just write a contract with somebody for a fee.
That's the fee for service thing.
What?
Real estate by.
But they say, but it says that Maryland doesn't allow transactional
Are you sure that's what you're saying? Do you know what you're saying that?
But,
Is it in the book?
yeah, I was
Okay.
pretty tired,
Huh?
but I'll look it up again.
Please look it
I
up
was
again.
freaking
Yeah,
out.
because you can do transactional book. That's what the fee for service thing is.
When you just do
Okay, you
paperwork.
can do transactional
Alright,
book.
wait, I got underlined it, so I can find it.
Okay. So when you find it, let's hear it. They're probably saying something.
Different.
Yeah,
hopefully,
different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sean, we gonna miss you.
I miss you guys too. I'm crying already.
You say that every class.
Serious though, we gonna
Just say
Oh, yeah, I get sentimental. Let's jump that. Little do you know, Sean is jumping in his kin. This is the last day. What? You don't know what teachers do. When was the last day? Shh. He happy inside. He ain't gonna. He may miss y'all, but
No,
But
no,
he's jumping again to another class. Like,
no, not immediately. So
yeah, he got a little break in
I'm
between. What?
gonna-
Oh yeah, you
No,
gonna
not
take a break.
immediately. I'm gonna take a break.
We were that hard on you?
No, I just need a break.
Nah, you just. That's what I say.
Okay, so if you're working with someone who's a customer,
Somebody that don't have a contract.
I don't have a contract. So let's say you're working with someone who's a customer and you're taking them around, you know, maybe to view some properties. What are you supposed to do and when?
Let him. What do you say?
What are you supposed to do?
And when?
Let him know you're a realtor.
Get a contract? I mean, let them know that like
You're Your license.
let them know that you can show them houses, but you can't do anything.
I knew there was a qualification there somewhere.
I don't get it.
You gotta tell them you're a realtor.
Okay, so someone is trying to buy as a customer, but you don't have a contract with them?
You still owe the fiduciary
No,
responsibility.
we know you owe them all of those things, but are you their agent?
No.
So you need to inform them of that, right?
Yes.
So you need to tell them, you have the obligation to tell them that you're not my client, I'm not your agent. You have to tell them that either orally or in writing. Either orally or in writing. What must you tell them that you're representing? Who would you tell them you're representing?
We don't have a
The
contract.
seller on the other side, even though you don't know the seller.
Okay.
But at that point, you're representing the seller. What are you regarded as to the
Sub-agent?
brokerage with whom the property is listed?
The sub-agent.
The sub-agent.
Yeah.
So you're the sub-agent of the listing broker.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay,
that's right.
you're the sub-agent of the listing broker.
But then
If
you
this
can,
person is a customer, that's why you need to tell them right now, I'm not representing you, I'm representing that brokerage with whom the property was listed.
got you.
You have to tell them that either orally or in writing. Okay, going to Kathy's observation. What page is that? Let's all go there.
Page 104.
And let's resolve that issue. Page what?
104.
In which
book?
In the state statement.
First paragraph on the left-hand side.
104, 104.
104, you said?
Yeah, page 104, under brokerage and agency are always the same. Did you see that? So, the first paragraph, the last sentence, I actually have that underlined too in my book.
You do?
Yeah, I have it underlined too. I just saw it here. I have it underlined in my book. Okay, did you see that? Did you all see it? So, page 104, the first paragraph, the last sentence, which says, Maryland law does not recognize or permit transactional brokerage in which licenses act solely as a middleman.
Where are you at?
Does anyone understand that? Okay, now, so this is not saying that you cannot do transactional brokerage.
Second paragraph.
So what the licensee is you. Okay, so let's say someone commissions you, they just want you to write them the offer. Like let's say it's an FSBO.
Right.
For sale by owner, someone wants to, but they don't know how to, they don't want to use an agent. They want to sell it on their own and they say, your license right, can you write me the contract? That's transactional brokerage.
Right.
You can do that. That's allowed. That's transactional brokerage. What you cannot do is represent them in that transaction as if you were their agent.
Right. Okay.
You get, because usually, don't forget that the agent usually acts in the capacity of a middleman. You're the bridge between you and the other side, right? As the agent.
So you can't be the
You're
bridge.
you're interfacing with the agent, the sellers. If you're the buyer's agent, you're interfacing with the seller's agent, right? The principals usually don't talk. Usually they don't even meet until closing. Okay, so you're serving as a middleman in that way. You're representing one of them. You're a middleman. So you can't do transactional brokerage and still be the middleman. It's either you're representing them as their agent, they're your client, and you're acting in the capacity of a middleman, or you're doing transactional brokerage in which all what you're doing is just writing the contract. You're not talking to anybody else for them. You're not calling the agent on the other side. You have no business with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Do you understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what this is saying. So if it's just transactional brokerage, you're just helping them to write the contract, you're not interfacing with anybody else on their behalf, then you're good. But you cannot call it transactional brokerage and at the same time represent them in the transaction. Then you're acting as a middleman because it's not consistent.
I have a question.
Yeah, it's not consistent.
So when you're doing transactional brokerage work, if you're working with like a FS for sale by owner, if you're working with that person and you're doing that transactional brokerage, like you said, it's now a fee for service. It still get paid to the broker, like the brokerage name and everything.
Of course. It has to be paid through your broker.
And then the fees now, so those fees are set by the brokerage then to figure out what fee to charge. It's a
Yes.
standard fee set by the brokerage.
Yes, and don't forget that it's also subject to negotiation. Everything is subject to negotiation. So sometimes you have someone whom you know, let's say it's your relative who wants to sell their property, they don't want to use that, they don't want to pay that commission.
Okay.
Remember, people don't want to pay, they don't want to pay commission to nobody. They just want to, they don't want to pay maybe as much commission anyway, so they're like, okay, her nephew, and she's like, can you help me write the contract? I'm going to pay you $1,000 or $2,000 for that. Your broker doesn't know about it. You can write a contract and collect the $2,000 from your aunt, but you're violating the law. You still have to run it through your broker. So if your aunt is writing the check, it's got to be to your broker who will now cut the check to you. What do you mean, why? You can't collect money from nobody. That's the first rule of real estate. Please note that. Don't let nobody give you money for whatever you do for them.
That's what I'm saying. Why do we need to let
Victor has this evil look.
Like,
That's how I feel what he's saying. It's my homie, like they were like, why he going now?
On his face. Victor was like, I don't know about that.
Right. I'm gonna add it going now.
Okay. Here's a question. Which one of all of this disclosure forms are needed in every real estate transaction? Number one, the high tension electrical power disclosure form. Number two, disclosure about the financial condition of the property. And number three, lead-based paint disclosure for a house built in 1979. None of them.
Oh, right.
None of them.
wrong. Look, loud.
See, all other, listen to me, all other whatever kind of disclosure you want to talk about, they're not required.
No disclosures required?
No disclosures are necessary unless they are necessary. You understand that? So if there's radon on the property, that's the only time you need a radon disclosure. If there's no radon on the property, there's no need to give radon. But for properties, so the only disclosure that you're mandated to give, whether it's on the property or it's not, it doesn't matter, is a lead-based paint disclosure for properties built before 1978. So if the property is built before 1978, it doesn't matter whether there's lead-based paint on it or there's no lead-based paint on it, you have to give that mandatory disclosure. It's mandated.
So property built after 78, disclosure is mandated.
Not after 1978.
Oh, before.
Prior to 1978. So if it's after 1978, if it's 1980 or 1979, from 1979 onwards, you know you don't need to front load that disclosure.
There's actually January of 78.
Of 78.
In the book, it's January, so.
Right.
You're saying.
Okay, so let's note that because that's a trick question. So you need to be careful. We know that in the state of Maryland, there's no statutory interest rate for first for mortgage loans, secured on property. If it's a first-time home buyer thing, there's no statutory rate, of interest rate on first mortgages. So let's note that. So
Wait, I'm sorry, Sean, can you explain, what do you think? No
did anybody understand what I just said?
No statutory interest rate, I don't know.
There's no limit on the interest rate.
There's no limit.
charged.
There's no limit on the
First.
interest rate charged. There's no statutory rate prescribed.
But
What's the but?
there is high-priced mortgage loan disclosures if it's too high. There's all kinds of problems.
Yeah, I know, but that's disclosure. After it's charged. Okay, but there's no rate. On it. Okay. So all of the things you need to do before closing as a broker or the salesperson in a transaction, all the things you need to do, maintain the schedule, of the closing process for someone for the closing, for settlement.
Question. Where are you reading these questions from?
My book, my notes. Because I want you to note these things.
He just wants you to rap, bro.
You understand me?
Yeah, I got you.
You wanna know, where they coming from?
Okay, so
Maintain.
if you're preparing for closing, if you're preparing for closing, the things you have to do as either the broker or the salesperson, You have to arrange and maintain the schedule, you know, of all the net proceeds, you know, make sure all those disclosure forms, disclosure forms are taken care of. You have to explain the closing disclosure, you know, to your client. You also have to coordinate, you know, inspections and all of those things. There's the home inspections. You know, all the administrative things you need to do, deliver all the documents, you know, to all the relevant parties. You have to do all of those things. Is it part of your job to conduct the title search? No. That's the title company's, you know, job. As a matter of fact, at closing, we don't have a lot of things to do.
So you said before closing, inspections, disclosures, whatever.
Yeah, explain the process to them, maintain the records, the schedule.
Coordinate inspections.
Yeah, coordinate inspections.
Deliver all documents.
Don't think that they're not allowed to coordinate the inspections.
No, you are allowed to coordinate. You have to coordinate inspections. You have to do that. Another thing I want you guys to know is that the state transfer tax, what is it? The state transfer tax, what is it assessed by or with?
100% of the home value. 100% of the home
The
value.
reassessment thing you said?
Is it the home value?
Market value?
Or the
Market
selling
value.
price of the product, the market value? Is it the okay, so let's get that right. Is it the home value or the selling price? It's the selling price.
So, say it again? Oh, yeah.
But the assessed value,
Mhm.
it's the assessed value, isn't it?
Mhm.
What was your question?
Oh, yeah, it is the selling price,
Is-
because
is
then
it-
they reassess it.
Exactly. Is the selling price. So my question is, the state transfer tax is based on what?
Market value.
It's based on the selling price of the property. Okay, it's computed on the selling price of the property, not on the market value.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
My bad, I'm loud around again.
If you're buying a timeshare, how many days do you have to cancel it?
3.
Are you talking about first time? No, 7 or 15?
No.
You talking about the first
15.
time?
15.
No.
15.
10 days.
10
10 days.
10 days the first time, yeah.
You didn't say 10. I wasn't looking at you, but I was listening to what you were saying.
I was trying to make sure you're listening.
I was listening to what you were saying.
10 days.
So it's 10 days.
First time, what is it?
For first time, if you're trying to buy, you buy a timeshare. Okay, and then you want to cancel it, to cancel the project.
Right.
It's 10 days. Yeah, the timeshare purchase is 10 days. Again, don't forget that if you're taking someone out, you know, on the property, somebody who's a customer, you know, who's not a client, you need to explain. So if you can tell them everything you want to tell them about the property, but if you don't explain to them the agency situation, you're in violation.
Okay.
So please note that you can see a question, you know, in which you have done every other thing but failed to disclose the agency situation to them, you'll be in violation.
Is there some type of document that's already prepared?
What?
Like saying that?
Well, we said that you can tell them orally too.
Orally, yeah.
All right.
All what you're trying to do is to explain to them the agency situation, that I'm not your agent. I'm the sub-agent of the listing brokerage. Until you sign a contract with me, you're on your own. Okay, so that's what that means. So you have to, so if you don't tell them that, you're in violation.
You still in the state?
Yeah, I'm still on the stage.
Alright.
We're still going to go through some national questions, but first you have to go. You must have gone through all your quizzes that you have. I hope you guys have done all your reviews. You know, for all, you know, it's important that you have done that at this time. Okay, I think we're good with the state ad questions. We can, I mean, if you can remember all these things we talked about, you should be good. But nothing still substitutes understanding the question. I mean, sometimes you read the question, you already know what the answer is, right? And you just go straight to the choices and you say the answer, which could be the right answer, and you just choose it, but there could be a catch there somewhere.
I hate that.
Oh, I know.
I hate
That's
that.
what happens.
That happens all the time, you know. You see the question, you just conclude, I know the answer, and you actually look at the options, you see the answer, you think it is, and you choose it. So you may know the answer, still read the question and read other options. And read the other options, okay? Okay, so I'll do the national questions randomly. I'll just do it randomly. Remember the primary mortgage market, the secondary mortgage market. What's the distinction between the two of them? You know what the Fannie Mae does, right?
What's
You
the
know-
first? Oh, yeah. Yep. Excuse me. Yep.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, I just want a little bit clarification on the timeshare, because I heard you talking about 10 days, and then we have to cancel a timeshare if I have 7 days. That's it.
Resale. That's a resale.
Thank you.
If it's a first time purchase, you have within 10 days to cancel. If it's a resale of a timeshare, you have within 7 days to cancel.
Thank you.
We know that it's the conventional loan that usually has the lowest loan to value ratio, right? There's a conventional loan that usually has that.
Loan to what?
The loan to value ratio, the conventional loan. Okay,
That's what it said in the book?
usually, that's what it says.
Because it's the most secured one.
Okay, so the
Maybe-
right answer
maybe-
is conventional.
Yes,
Okay.
it's conventional. Yes. Okay. And we know that all of these operators in the secondary mortgage market, you know, the Fannie Mae, Ginnie Mae, Freddie Mac, you know, Fannie Mac, they all purchase existing loans, right? They all purchase existing loans. That's what they do. Okay. Question: what's the loan to value ratio? Because we just said that the conventional loan is most likely to have the lowest loan to value ratio. So the question is, what's the loan to value ratio?
The amount of loan that you get according to the value of the house.
Right. Okay. When it comes to the to appraisal, right? The appraisal process. Remember the appraisal process? The 3 steps of appraisal, right? What are the 3 steps?
SWF,
General,
general,
data specific,
Specific
reconciliation.
and all 3
Now
approaches.
you know all 3 approaches and in what situations they apply, right?
Something
Whether
like
it's
that.
the income approach, whether it's a sales comparison approach, whether it's a cost approach. Please note all of those things. It's things we've done in our quizzes. Okay. We know that the sales comparison approach is more suitable for existing residents, right? The cost approach is for what? Replacement cost, right? Replacement cost. Okay. When it comes to the zoning ordinances, you know, remember all what we talked about, the grandfather properties and non-conforming use? Okay, so you can see a question about non-conforming use. You can actually see, hear a case scenario that tells you they've been using this property before the zoning law came into effect. Then they can get, you know, an allowance to continue using it for that non-conforming use. So the property will be said to have been grandfathered into the zoning ordinance. So it's grandfathered into the zoning ordinance. Okay. What's a variance? An exception, thank you. A variance is an exception to a zoning ordinance. A variance is an exception to a zoning ordinance. You remember all of those protected classes under the Federal Fair Housing Act?
7 of them.
You know, so if you see a question that doesn't align with any one of those 7, you know it's not protected under the Federal Fair Housing Act. For example, familial status is a protected class under the Federal Fair Housing Act, right? Familial status is.
Yeah, it
But
is.
marital status is not.
Nah.
You know, sexual orientation is not, gender
Nah.
identity is not, political affiliation, source of income, all of these other ones are not. So you need to know all the federal protected
Yeah.
classes. And you need to be careful with all those kind of questions. If the question doesn't say under the Federal Fair Housing, it won't even tell you federal, it will just say under the Fair
Fair
Housing
Housing.
Act. You know that's federal. It's not gonna tell you under the Federal Fair Housing Law, it's just gonna tell you under the Fair Housing Act. Anywhere you see the Fair Housing Act, you know it's the federal law they're talking about. But if it just says fair housing generally and they don't specify whether it's the Fair Housing Act, then you know that all these other protected classes are included.
Okay.
Okay. I know that still under the Fair Housing Act, Federal Fair Housing Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, you can discriminate against people based upon their financial condition, right? You can do that. You can discriminate. You're not earning enough. You have bad credit. Yes, you can do that. Okay, but you can't discriminate based upon all this other demographical information. Remember all the types of leases we have? The estate for years,
Oh, estate,
Period to period.
the periodic tenancy, the tenancy at will, and the holdover tenancy, a sufferance,
Yes.
right? Remember all of them? You also remember the types of leases or other classification, the percentage lease, the gross lease,
Net lease.
huh?
Net lease.
Huh?
Net lease.
The net lease,
Proprietary.
and there's another one,
The P, right?
huh? How about the index lease?
Oh, yeah. As the general, and the, yeah. They have the 2 kind.
Hmm?
On the next lease?
No, I mean, it's just based on the index, and I call it index, it's based on the,
I see.
Graduated.
the
Graduated
index.
versus
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
Yeah, so remember all of those things, they graduated, you know, all of those things, okay?
Amen.
Remember all the physical characteristics of land, the economic characteristics of land, remember all of them. Physical and economic characteristics of land, we've done all of that, those are our first few classes. Remember the difference between the police power of the state and the power of eminent domain. The police power of the state is for the general welfare and, you know, safety of the youth, okay? But the power of eminent domain is what? It's exercised, you know, to take over property for a public purpose, right? To be used for a public purpose. But the power of eminent domain is broader. It's broader in scope. What are the kind of deductions you can make? I remember that we asked this question to one of the quizzes. What are the kind of federal deductions you can make as a homeowner? Yeah, tax deductions you can make as a homeowner, the federal deductions. Can you make deductions on the repairs or renovation you make on your property?
Yes.
No?
No.
Not under federal tax law, you can't do that.
Depreciation.
How about your insurance premiums, can you?
Yeah, you can,
make-
no, damn.
Oh, wow.
You can only make federal
Taxes.
deductions on your,
Interest.
on your interest, thank you.
Okay.
You can make the deductions on the interest on the property taxes. Okay, interest on property taxes, federal deductions. Please note that. all other things, no.
I have a budget graph, somebody talking about.
No, she said
What?
interest.
Somebody do, what?
But for the
Write all the
amount that is.
renovations to this.
On the state, maybe.
Back. It can't be like you just put in a toilet, you have to actually renovate an entire room.
You could take that off your federal or state.
Take it off the federal, or
State.
maybe the state.
You can, it's really tricky, but you can do it.
Oh, okay.
But it's not on the, it's not on the test.
Exactly, but
Okay.
generally, no, it's, you know, it's, you know, so you can only deduct your interest, you know, and property.
Yes. All I care about now is the test, right?
Yeah, and property taxes, okay. You know all the difference between the types of listings, right? The exclusive right to sell listing, exclusive agency, the net listing, and the open listing. You can see the question on that. You know, be able to tell which one is which. You know that in the exclusive right to sell listing, the broker has to be the procuring cause. I mean, the broker doesn't have to be the procuring cause in the exclusive right to sell listing. So whether or not the broker sells, it doesn't matter. He still gets paid a commission. In the exclusive agency listing, the broker has to sell to get paid a commission. So if the buyer sells a property on his own without the broker's help, in an exclusive agency listing, the broker doesn't get paid a commission. So we need to note, you know, all those fine distinctions. The RESPA as a law, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, you know, primarily applies to the activities of lenders. Please note that. It primarily applies to what lenders do, you know. RESPA. Lenders who finance the purchase of residential properties. That's what RESPA addresses. Now, when it comes to ownership, forms of ownership in real estate, remember which one is the highest form of ownership or the best degree of ownership you can have in real estate? The fee simple, right? The fee simple. Okay. Remember all the fee simple subject to condition, subsequent, fee simple determinable. Remember all those things? Okay. Remember the difference between riparian rights and literal rights. Okay, you know, riparian rights, you know, only apply to rights on non-navigable rivers, right? Okay. Remember the 4 unities of joint tenancy. Remember those 4 unities? The PITs. The PITs. Remember the distinction between the joint tenancy and the tenancy in common, and how those unities can be destroyed. If the unity is destroyed, it becomes what?
Tenancy in common.
A tenancy in common. So don't get confused. So you need to understand the question when it comes to, you can say a question. It starts off as joint tenancy. So be careful all of those questions. So if you understand the principle, you shouldn't get the answer wrong. So all what you need to do is understand the principle of how it works. You know situations in which a joint tenancy can still be sustained while a new owner comes in as a tenant in common with existing joint tenants. Or it could be that a new person coming in entirely destroys the unities, and then it becomes, all of them become tenants in common. Or nobody comes in, and then the last person to survive the rest becomes an owner in severalty. So we need to, you know, really understand the principle and how the principle operates in all these different situations. Okay. Remember that the common element thing is relevant for condominium ownership, right? Okay. Remember all those things we talked about, the life estate? The life estate?
Oh, yeah. The life estate and like that, how,
What's the life estate? No, that's the legal life estate.
Oh.
So don't confuse it. There's a difference between the life estate and the legal. Like the legal life estate are what the homestead, courtesy,
Courtesy, and
dower,
dower.
right?
Dower.
Which are all abolished. But the life estate is what? It's a form of ownership for the life of the person.
So you can
For as
do
long
like,
as they live, right?
Yeah.
For their own life, as long as they live. So whenever they die, the property either goes back to the original owner as a reversion, or it goes back to the remainder man, right? You remember that, right?
Mhm.
Okay. You remember what a lien is? Okay, and what makes a lien either voluntary or involuntary?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So you should be able to tell, depending on how the lien is created. Okay, it's the method of creation of the lien that gives you the inkling into whether it's a voluntary lien or involuntary. If I create it on my own, it's voluntary, like a mortgage lien, I create it on my own. A bill bond lien, I create that on my own, is voluntary. A judgment lien is involuntary. A mechanics lien is involuntary. You know, so it's the intention to create that distinguishes both of them. So let's say someone has an easement we know what an easement is, right? What's an easement?
Right to use
Right to use
A
land.
right of way, a right to use property, to use the property. And you know that, you know the servant tenement
Yeah.
and the dominant tenement? Which one is a servant tenement and which one is a dominant tenement?
Dominant is the one that's using the land.
The dominant is the one that's using.
Yeah.
The servant is the one that's being used.
Yeah.
It's the one serving. Is a slave. Okay, servant is serving the other one. The servant is the one being used. The dominant is the one using. Okay, please note that. We know what the list pendants is, right?
Yeah. Creating
The notice of litigation of a lawsuit. We know that every real estate transaction has to be in writing, right? For it to be enforceable. We know what the suit in specific performance is, right?
I'm sorry?
Well, the remedy in specific performance. When does specific performance become relevant in a situation of breach of contract? What's specific performance? It's one of the remedies we talked about for breach of contract.
Oh, the landlord is not holding up his bargain
Mm-hmm.
and maintaining or providing
Is it, yeah, is
providing proper like living conditions for the tenant.
Is she on the right
This
track?
is a sale. It has to do with a sale,
It has
not
to
a
do-
tenancy. So so the court can give an order for specific performance. The contract is ratified, right? The seller
yeah.
accepts the contract, and then the seller says, "I'm no longer selling to you."
It's
The
when-
buyer now sues the seller for breach of contract.
So you
One
can
of the
make
remedies
him
that
sell
the
it.
buyer can get from the court is an order for specific performance, and where the court will
the seller.
specifically make the seller perform the contract.
What is it called again? I'm sorry, Sharon.
Specific performance.
Specific.
It's also known as the order of forced sale. The court will force the seller to sell the property to the buyer. It's an equitable remedy. So you could see a question like that where it paints, a situation where the seller breaches the contract, the buyer goes to court. Okay, what kind of remedy can the buyer get? It can get an order for specific performance.
So that's just when like, let's say the seller says, you know what, I don't wanna go forward, but
Yes.
you can force to go to
It'll be forced to go forward.
go into court.
Yes.
Okay.
The seller will be forced to go to closing by the court. Yeah, you have to sell that property to the buyer. It rarely happens, though. The courts are usually extremely reluctant to give an order for specific performance. They can give you damages, either compensatory damages or punitive damages, but it's only in really exceptional situations that they give the order for specific performance. But they do give it sometimes. depending on the facts of the case. Okay, you know, and another remedy that the court gives to the buyer is one liquidated damages, right? What's liquidated damages?
Money?
Money, what money?
Yeah.
What is the nature of the liquidated damages remedy?
The EMD.
You can sue for. Shit, man, there's a lot of information, Sean. Just listen to me.
What's the liquidated damages remedy? So the liquidated damages is the pre-agreed upon remedy that the parties are. So you know, in the contract, there is usually a liquidated damages clause that says if either of us breaches this contract, he's gonna pay $10,000 to the other side. That's
An agreed amount.
the agreed
Yeah,
amount.
That's what it is.
You know, to take care of a breach of contract situation. That's the liquidated damages. Do we all remember that?
Yeah, now you said it.
You didn't remember? You're tired, right? I know. That's usually how Mondays are. Nobody is as tired as I am.
Oh, my.
Nobody is half as tired as I am.
I think I'm more tired. You can talk about this another time.
Okay. Remember the circular and the Sarah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The circular is when you're
The
held
circular and the Sarah.
reliable.
What's the
for
circular? What does the circular do?
You have
What does
no
it impose?
strict
liability.
liability, yeah.
The circular doesn't care. It imposes strict, joint, several liability, even retroactive liability against the owner of property. Okay, that's a circular.
Sarah now is that the
Sarah,
innocent thing,
Yeah,
exception to
the
Sarah.
innocent owner exception.
Like no way out.
Circular is like no way out. But Sarah now gives you a leeway. Thank you, Sarah. Remember the difference between the equitable right of redemption
Mhm.
and the statutory right of redemption?
Mhm.
If you see a question that says someone's property has been foreclosed, you know they have both of those rights, right?
Yeah.
They have both of those rights. But you see a question that says, what kind of right of redemption does the owner of property have in the event of a foreclosure?
Mhm.
What would be your answer?
Equitable right. That comes before. 'cause that
Equitable
comes-
right,
yeah,
thank
comes
you,
before
because it comes before the
Before the
statutory.
sale, yeah.
So if you see statutory right of redemption in the options, you know, even though it has that right, but that's not the
Equity
correct
comes
answer.
first, yeah.
Because it can't be statutory, the equitable has to come before the statutory. Okay. We know the differences between the unilateral contract, the bilateral contract.
Mhm.
You know, all those, you know. What's a bilateral contract?
Two parties making promises to each other.
Exactly. How about unilateral?
One party
One
only
party
making a
being
promise.
bound, you know, it becomes a contract when the other party performs the contract and accepts the contract. What's an example of a unilateral
Option,
contract?
opinion.
An option.
Option, that one.
An option.
Oh, no.
An option.
Is it bilateral?
What's the law of agency? How would you define the law of agency?
The agency is creating a relationship between people that are doing brokerage work.
Right. And it also applies to the responsibilities that you have
Okay.
when you're representing someone in a real estate transaction. So the law of agency, you know, basically entails all the rules that apply, all the responsibilities that an agent has when it's acting for another person. What's the nature of your relationship to your client when you're representing a client? What kind of obligation do you owe them?
Every other fiduciary.
Fiduciary is a fiduciary obligation. what kind of relationship, agency relationship, in terms of the obligations exists between you and your broker?
Loyalty.
It's still fiduciary.
Fiduciary.
Loyalty is one of the fiduciary obligations. Remember the code AC? Okay. Care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. Okay, so all of them, so you're still, it's the same thing as between you and your broker, and as between you and your client. It's still fiduciary obligations. Okay. If you don't disclose property defects, material defects on the property to a prospective buyer, what did you do?
You violate the,
Care?
you violate the law,
What duty did you
oh, disclosure.
the duty of disclosure? Okay, and you know that withholding that information deprives them of the opportunity to make an informed decision whether they want to buy or not. So you've deprived them of that opportunity. When you withhold information that you know, if it's a latent defect which you know about and you don't disclose it, you've prevented someone from making an informed decision. Okay,
And then they can report you to the commission.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, technically, when it comes to agency, whether it's what, you know what a single agency is? What's a single agency?
When you have one
One brokerage or one
brokerage and
broker
representative.
representing only one party. In the dual agency situation, what happens? One broker representing both the seller and the buyer, right? In technical terms, the dual agency is also regarded as designated agency. Please note that. Okay, dual agency is also regarded as designated agency. So if you see a question that says designated agency, you know it's talking about dual agency. Okay, because the broker has to designate intra-company agents to both the buyer and the seller. So it's known as designated agency. So the same agent may represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. It may represent both of them in the same transaction. Remember the difference between an assignment and innovation?
Assignment and transfer,
Innovation is what?
relieving, actually giving it, I guess.
Yeah. Substitution or assumption. Okay, so please note that. Okay, please note that innovation is
You said what?
substitution, you know, of the contract for another one. But an assignment is a transfer. So anywhere you say the transfer of all rights, if you say the transfer, you know that's an assignment. Anywhere you say transfer, it's an assignment. Anywhere you say substitution, you know that's innovation. Remember the difference between an offer, an acceptance, and a counter offer? What's a counter offer?
When you, it's a new off.
A new term introduced, right, into the
Kills the
contract.
previous offer.
Exactly. So if a counter offer is introduced into an existing negotiation offer, what does it do to the original offer?
It nulls it, it voids it.
It voids it. It destroys the original offer. So a counter offer destroys the original offer. So the offeror, the original offeror will be relieved of the terms of his offer, right? So if I say, will you buy my property for $200,000? And you say, no, I only want to buy it for $180,000. What you did is a counter offer. I'm relieved of that. I may say, no, I'm not selling it to you for $180,000. Now, if I walk away, you can't sue me for walking away and say, now if you want to insist I want to buy it for $200,000, I can say no. Because your introduction of the $180,000 has destroyed my $200,000 offer, so I can walk away. It has relieved me of my offer, of my obligation under the contract. Okay. You know the difference between the voidable and void contracts? Remember all of those things? Misrepresentation, mistake, duress and due influence, all of those things. they render a contract to be voidable. Even insanity or mental incapacity makes a contract voidable. When does it become void? No.
No, that's voidable.
We need to declare,
When the person under 18, it's voidable. But when does mental incapacity become voids the contract and not make it
when they
voidable?
become incompetent, when they declare.
When it's
If they
legally
declare-
declared to be insane.
Insane.
When someone has been legally declared to be insane, then it voids the contract. Okay. I know that in a dual agency situation, the same broker can represent both the seller and the buyer when both of them agree to the dual agency,
That's the one out there here. That's gonna be the answer by itself on there. I was just saying, there's no other option that's gonna be.
Okay, remember the difference between exaggeration and puffing?
Mhm.
So remember all of this.
You're the most handsome man in the world.
Exactly. You're puffing. This is the most beautiful man, is the most handsome man I've ever seen in my entire life. Marry him. And then she marries him and she discovers that he's not. Well.
And lace front.
You said it's puffing and what else?
Exaggerate.
Exaggeration.
Remember all those terms we talked about all through the program? Is cheat, usury.
Uh-huh.
Please remember all of those things, right? Remember how they operate. Cheat, usury, stuff like that. Remember that the signature of the grantee is not required to make a deed valid, right?
Mhm.
Remember all the different kinds of deeds that we have.
Mhm.
The general warranty
General.
deed, the special warranty
Special
deed,
warranty, quick claim,
the quick claim deed, and the bargain
bargain
and
and
sale.
sale.
Okay, so remember all of those things and how they operate. Remember that title passes, in a real estate transaction, when what happens?
Acceptance and an offer and
When there's
acceptance.
acceptance and delivery, okay. I know that a person who inherits real estate through a will, when someone dies testate, what's that called?
No, it's not conveyed. It is demise.
Demise. That's the demise. Property conveyed through inheritance when someone dies testate, that's with the will. That's the demise. Okay, that's a demise. Remember all those legal description of property, all three types of legal description of property?
Yeah.
Remember all three of them, the meets and bounds,
Meets and bounds,
rectangular
lot
survey
and block.
system, and the lots and block. Don't forget them. You remember what the deficiency judgment is? You remember what the deficiency judgment is? What's the deficiency judgment?
What's the difference?
Shit. Is that the one when the?
The difference between how much you're owing and how much the property is sold for. So you're still liable to pay. You're still liable to pay to the lender if it's below how much you're owing.
On
Not
foreclosure.
Not foreclosure. Now, if they sell it above what you're owing, now they will be the one to owe you. You as the mortgager, you're entitled to part of the sales, the process of the sale, in the foreclosure sale. But if it's below that, it's a deficiency judgment and you have to pay them back. Remember, in the types of financing techniques, remember you have how the acceleration clause works, right?
Mhm.
The acceleration clause,
Yep.
which pays up
Everything.
you have to pay it all at once. You know what the subordination agreement is done for? It's used for, what's it used for? Subordination agreement. To reorder the priority of liens, remember that? It reorders the priority of liens. We know that the right of redemption is the right for you to get your property back, to regain your property. That's the right of redemption. What does a promissory note do?
To pay back the loan, a
The
promise?
personal promise, you have to pay back the loan. We know that the property manager is an example of what kind of agent?
General.
General agent. General agent. Okay. How is a lease usually terminated?
When it's,
No, expiration. Expiration of the term. Okay, yeah, and then you paid attention, if you go over, all your quizzes, go over them again, between tomorrow and Wednesday before the class, and just remember all what we talked about today.
How many questions on that?
110 questions. You have to have 83 of them to pass. You have to have 83 of them to pass. So you can't get more than 27 questions wrong. That's what it means. And 27 questions is a lot of questions to get wrong. Okay, so
You gonna have some more practice
say that again.
I didn't say nothing. It's just loud and wrong and loud and wrong. The PSI is only a 70, right? I thought the PSI.
Yes.
So why is it a 75? Cause they be like,
That's last time. If you can get some, it helps you prepare for the PSI. We want you to be able to do more than
Yeah, you PSI proctor.
no.
Can you sign up for this one?
yeah, so we can just come to your class, and then we could do like
I'll think about it.
reviews, and then we can.
Okay, so on Wednesday, we're just coming here. I'm gonna give 10 minutes. So we're gonna start at 6:40 because we're gonna have a long day on Wednesday. I have to mark everything myself. So we don't have, a lot of time to waste. We all have to wait. I'll mark it for everybody. Okay, so you know what you got. If you pass on Wednesday, you're gonna get your certificate and you're done.
I will.
Okay. If you miss classes, you have to go to Bowie on Saturday. Okay. And do the makeup class. It's supposed to be for 3 hours if you miss 3 hours. Okay, but I don't think it should be up to 3 hours, but you just have to show up in Bowie. If you need the address, I'll give it to you on Wednesday. That's if you miss classes. Okay, so if you miss classes and you don't pass on Wednesday, that means you're doing 2 things on Saturday. You're doing the makeup classes and you're doing the final exam. Okay. So, all the best, guys.